In this video, we're gonna go over the 3 books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa, the great esoteric encyclopedia of the Middle Ages. I'll tell you what you'll find in each book, take note of a few important teachings throughout, and of course, we'll provide you with the list of angels, archangels, intelligences, and spirits that he shares with us. These 3 books, now published as one big brick, is one of the most influential occult books in Western history, having been a big influence to many magicians after, including John Dee, that received the Enochian system, Francis Barrett, that copied a lot of Agrippa's work, and even the more modern Golden Dawn tradition. If you find value in content surrounding magic, please subscribe. I hope to bring you many teachings I learned throughout my magical and spiritual journey. Also, if you find value in this video specifically, leave a like and help this video reach other people. The 3 books of occult philosophy in their very structure already reflect a bit of Agrippa's mystical worldview, which comprises 3 worlds: the natural world, which I think we more easily recognize as the material world, the celestial, in which the celestial intelligences of the planets and other beings can act. In a more modern view, this could be seen as the astral plane. And lastly, the intellectual world, or divine/spiritual, which is the highest plane of existence, an archetypal plane composed of the ideas within the mind of God. Reverberating such structure, he gives us 3 books, one concerning each of these 3 worlds. The very first concerns the natural world, and is, in my humble opinion, the less interesting out of the 3, but it's still very important. He gives a few important concepts, so I really do recommend any serious magician to read all the 3 books. But you should at least be an intermediate magician, because it's not a very practical book, so you should already have a ritual practice to be able to fully enjoy and learn from this book. Otherwise, most of it won't be usable to you. But even the beginners are fine because they have this video which intends to share a little bit of what I learned. So you can get a taste for what he's speaking of, and later in your journey, when you're more accustomed to magic, you can go on and read it. The first book contains a whole bunch of associations between plants, animals, planets, deities, and much more. An important aspect of magic are those exact associations, which allows us to expand our views and enact correlations to manifest our desires. Within any magical system, there will be associations to be learned. Here, he provides enough to be the very basis of an entire lifetime of magic. It's also where he most extensively talks about the elements, which are the basis for the natural world. The first book also contains a lot of witchcraft procedures for many different things. Some he attests that he has seen in action, and others he just compiled from what was practiced at the time. It's a good window to folk magic back then. But since this book revolves around the natural world, and they back then at the time still were not very developed scientifically, it stands to reason that some of its teachings are no longer correct under our modern scientific view. So I urge you not to mix herbs and animal parts to rub on your eyes. That would be an uninitiated way of reading Agrippa's work. Modern magicians should learn from our current scientific knowledge, which is much greater than theirs. Another thing this book teaches us is how the associations between herbs, stones, planets, and everything else is established. A kind of metaphorical logic that I'm trying to exemplify with this excerpt from the book. Be aware the book I have is in Portuguese, so I'll be doing my own translation, so it won't be exactly what you find in your book. It's clear now that the occult properties of things are not from nature, but are infused from above, hidden from our senses, and at the end, barely known by our reason, and those come in fact from life and the soul of the world, reaching us through the rays of the stars. So those that want to enter this study should consider that everything moves and comes back to its equal. It inclines to itself with all strength Therefore, in the things that have a nexus of a certain quality of or property, like heat, cold, courage, fear, sadness, anger, love, hate, or any other virtue or passion, those same things move and provoke such quality, passion, or virtue. In a way that fire moves fire, water moves water, and the courageous is moved by courage. In this way, it is said that any sterile animal can make others become sterile. If we wish, let's say, obtain a certain property or virtue, we should look for animals or other things in which such properties exist in most eminent form. Those are just a few parts of chapter 15 from book 1, but it exemplifies how we should think about the natural things, be it herbs, animals, or whatever else. And by noting the characteristics, the properties that they hold, and connecting those to astrological virtues and properties, we can draw such characteristics to ourselves. So one could even understand the reason behind the associations and make new ones. For example, if we have a herb that science teaches us that helps us sleep, there's already an innate connection to Saturn, and could be used as such. Other characteristics to observe go beyond their pharmaceutical application. Their appearance, smells, behavior throughout the seasons, and much more can and should be observed. A few other important ideas will also begin being presented here, such as the world soul, the anima mundi, which invites us to view the entirety of the material universe as having one unifying soul, or in other words, invites us to see the whole universe as one conscious living being. This view points to a divinity that is both transcendent and immanent, meaning existing fully as a potential within all created things. The world soul is the medium through which celestial souls unite with crude bodies and confer wonderful gifts. He will also talk about divination, suffumigations, enchantments, the power of words, how to draw divine or celestial virtues towards us, how all three worlds are interconnected to each other, and much more. But for the sake of this video, let's get to part 2. In Agrippa's words, super-celestial things are drawn down by celestial things, and supernatural things by natural things. For there is an operative virtue diffused through every kind of thing. The second book emphasizes math and astrology, and it's also where we find the so famous planetary magic squares and their respective intelligences and spirits. But the book begins with math, affirming that any magician should be learned in it. And although we should, most of his teachings regard the powers of each number, and we should just include it in our rituals to capture such virtues. He spends a few chapters providing the hidden meanings and virtues of the first 12 natural numbers, and then another, much bigger chapter talking about many other numbers that he considers mystically powerful. Most of them special biblical numbers. But it is in this book that we find another essential part of his philosophy. We humans are a perfect image of God. Even our geometric proportions attest to it. We are in the perfect spot within Agrippa's cosmological view to connect all existing worlds. The human being, in his view, is especially fit, and one should divinize himself to become more like God in order to actually operate magic. But that's a bit of book 3. Let's stay on book 2 a little while longer. We also see a bunch of astrology, times not to use certain planets, images associated with planets and zodiacal signs. We also hear of the 28 lunar mansions, how each interacts with the planets and which combinations should be avoided during our planetary work. It also touches on an aspect of astrology that seems almost lost nowadays, which are the fixed stars, their names, sigils, influences. Here are the fixed stars that Agrippa gives us, each having their own properties and particular affinities. Okay, so what are the fixed stars then? The ancients recognized 7 planets in the sky, which could also be called the wandering stars. To them, anything in the sky were celestial bodies. The categorization came from other characteristics. The 7 visible planets by the naked eye have a trajectory through the sky. As we go further up the path, which can be seen as either astrological or Kabbalistic, the planets begin to have slower and slower movements. Higher, Saturn is the slowest of them all. The other two, between quotes, planets are the Sun and the Moon. But the fixed stars are not part of our solar system. They are much further away. So much so that a few of them move very little. I think it's something akin to a few degrees over 72 years. So for most of anyone's life, it would seemingly be fixed in the background of the sky. If we were to see those celestial bodies as the ancients, we would believe that we were infused and influenced by their race, and that's how the power of creation manifests through the planet Earth. And since they were crucial for making us be, or for us existing, and we are made and influenced by their race, they also represent aspects of us. And we go through each planet to bring harmony and balance to each of those aspects of ourselves. But if you look at Kabbalah, after Binah, which is the sphere related to Saturn, we still have more to go, even in those old cosmological maps. After Saturn, we usually have the wheel of the zodiac, or the wheel of the fixed stars, which in Kabbalah would correspond to Hokmah. Actually, the fixed stars are often part of constellations, just like the zodiac, and usually amongst the most shining one of that particular constellation. A few are not stars by today's standards, being, for example, a cluster of stars. Either way, they represent a much more expanded notion and state of ourselves, which, as a magician, you really should get to know and develop the proper understanding surrounding it. Any magician truly benefits from knowing more and more of themselves. It's one of the very goals of the path. So for those who feel they've completed the planetary work of balancing their aspects of yourself, do begin working with the fixed stars and Hokmah. At the end of the video, I will leave a list of the zodiacal archangels, which are another path to work with that same level of yourself, the same aspect, if the fixed stars themselves are not of your interest. So stay tuned. The translator also gives us a few notes, giving us the sigils of the fixed stars from the Book of Enoch, including Aldebaran, Pleiades, Algol's Head, Canis Major, Canis Minor, Corleones, Alacorvi, Spica, and a few others. Feel free to stop the video, print the sigils, and after some more studying, because I'm not giving you what each of them does, but you can easily find that on Google. Feel free to experiment with the sigils and intelligences. Also, if you do, please come to the comments and share your experience. Probably the most famous part of the book is where he gives us the 7 kameas, or magic squares, one for each planet from old astrology, plus the divine names attributed to each planet. This gives us a list of associations that can be used in the construction of our own talismans, aimed at drawing the celestial virtues to our lives. By using the magic squares, the divine names, the intelligence or spirit of the planet, and activating such talisman during an evocation with the entities they are drawn, we can manifest the properties of the planets in our own lives. Here we have the kameas, plus the names of the intelligences and the spirits. He says the intelligences are used for good and the spirits for bad, but in my personal experience they can both work towards anything you wish. But the spirits are very much like a cacodemon, aggressive, chaotic spirits. It's important to have the intelligence in the ritual to contain such spirit, and you also need a higher spiritual authority to be able to control them. It's also a pretty neat system that provides us with both high spiritual intelligences and a daimonic force, combining the best of both worlds, almost like Dr. Rudd's Goetia, where a sham angel is called to contain the influences of the goetic demon. By the way, I recently made a video about 3 Goetia evocations I lived through personally and what I learned with it, so go check it out. We don't find a full liturgy for any ceremonial magic in the books, but for someone who's already a magician and already has the tools to summon different kinds of entities, this book is truthfully a goldmine. We're only in book 2 and we are already given kameas, planetary intelligences, planetary spirits, and fixed stars, plus their sigils, all of which a magician can work with and learn from, either through evocations, invocations, or talismanic magic. And by the way, for my fellow Kabbalists out there, which use a 4-world model, which I do too, since he puts the fixed stars in book 2, and those are connected to Bria, I'd say to collapse both models, we will have Sia as the natural world, the celestial from Agrippa would encapsulate both Yetzirah and Bria, and the intellectual world would be that of Absolute. Now we get to the third and last book, which is to me the most philosophically interesting. There's so much here. There's a deep, deep richness of spiritual concepts. How God is one and one is all, how it's our very nature, how a magician should work to be more and more divine, how the knowledge of God is necessary for the proper use of magic. He also talks of demons, spirits, genies, how celestial and beneficial influences can become corrupt at the material level, which is his way of tackling the problem of evil. And truly, there's so much here, you just have to read it. If I were to summarize it all, I would be here for hours and hours and hours. That's after editing. But there is one idea that I've found nowhere else but here. Agrippa talks about our holy guardian angel, at least that's how it's called nowadays. To him, it was the genius, how one should work towards having knowledge of their personal genius, and after that they should obey it, for it will guide you towards the divine will. But he differs a bit from the modern concept of the holy guardian angels, because he talks about 3 genius for each of us. One appointed by God, which is the most important and now known as the holy guardian angel, and in Agrippa's words, poorly translated by me, the holy diamond, according to the Egyptians' doctrine, is appointed to the rational soul not by the stars or planets, but by a supernatural cause direct from God, the president of all spirits, being universal and beyond nature, always putting good thoughts within our minds, being constantly active to illuminate us, although sometimes we don't note him. But when we are purified and live in peace, we can perceive almost as if he was speaking with us, communicating with us in its voice, even in silence, and taking effort every day to conduct us to a holy perfection. It's also with the help of this spirit that we can avoid the evilness of our destiny. He should be venerated by us with holy sanctity, just as Socrates did. But he also gives 2 more, one genius of our nativity, based on our time of birth and correlated to the most influential planets and fixed stars in the sky during that time, and one last, which can change throughout our lives based on the work or career we follow. Now, I decided to compile a few more general advices as practices that Agrippa suggests the reader. I'm not Christian, although I have a deep respect towards Jesus Christ. But for my Christians out there, Agrippa also teaches us to find biblical passages correlated to the results you're aiming to achieve with your magic, and by reading them during your ritual, imbue even more power towards your goals. Which is something very easy to implement and at the same time carries the weight of a tradition being consolidated by Agrippa. Still, in a more Christian vein, he also recommends small donations to people in need, as a way of self-purification and maintaining that pure state of your soul. And since I'm giving some of Agrippa's recommendations, I should also share something he tells us in Book 1, which regards good and bad omens. He strongly recommends that if you're beginning anything, going somewhere to do whatever, or just starting a new project, and at the very moment you begin or leave your house to go, you see a bad omen, of which he shares many, like a flying bird in a particular direction, you should stop your plans and wait for a more opportune sign. For proper use of this, he gives a list of things that can happen and which are considered good or bad omens. But I feel like once again this could be adapted a little bit, so you don't have to follow the book per se, but if you're going out or you're studying something and you see something or something happens that could be seen as some sort of a sign, maybe listen to it. Maybe it's the universe trying to communicate with you through those random things, which I think is the core of what Agrippa was trying to teach us, when it comes to omens and stuff at least. Book 3 also gives us a bunch more entities to work with. He talks of the 72 Shen Ha-Forash angels, 12 zodiacal archangels, archangels of the planets. By the way, he gives 2 lists of those. He gives archangels of the elements and the directions, and even 28 archangels of the lunar mansions. As I'm producing the video, this last part seems very fit for future references. So I'm also gonna give you one more thing that Agrippa shares with us. He gives a bunch of mystical alphabets, most of them to be used as ciphers for the Hebrew letters, and one, if I'm not mistaken, for the Latin alphabet. He also gives another kind of cipher for numbers. All can be experimented with and implemented to complement even further our talismanic practice, which could also draw from the images associated to the planets that can be drawn in another sort of talisman, which he also shares. So he provides a whole lot of elements to be introduced in our practice. Anyone who works with talismans will surely grow a lot from reading these books. I should also comment on the different translations. I have only read Donald Tyson's translation, then further translated to Portuguese. And that version can be a bit problematic in some ways. Number one, it wasn't based on the best sources available. It can have some very obscure parts. And two, because of how he uses the term demon in a somewhat weird way. But that's easy to get over if you already have let go of the concept that demons are necessarily bad, and know that many times things translated as demons are actually daimons, which should be translated as just spirits, which can be good, bad, or any combination of both. When talking about the personal genius, the HGA, he calls it a demon in Donald Tyson translations, so that can confuse some people. Just don't fall for it. Also, I haven't read it, so I can't say it for sure, but supposedly Eric Purdue's, which is a more modern translation of the 3 books of occult philosophy, is supposed to fix those problems found in Donald Tyson's. So if you have read both, please share some insights. But truly, although he gives us many beautiful entities to work with, the philosophy and spiritual view contained in these books is truly special. Just don't let yourself be swayed by Agrippa's prejudices against Kabbalists, for example. No author is perfect. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, share with someone you feel would learn from this, would enjoy this. I hope this can improve your magical journey. Thank you so much for watching so far. Much love and bliss to you. Goodbye.